business coach, and today I have the absolute pleasure to be in conversation with Julian Hall. And if you don't know who Julian Hall is, he's been an entrepreneur for over 25 years. He loves all things AI, tech, helping startups, but his big passion is really educating children into entrepreneurialism so they can create a future for themselves. So, hey, Julian, welcome to the Business Success Show.
Hi, Mac. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
You're most welcome. So thank you. So, Julian, let me get straight into this. You're an entrepreneur, you're a speaker, you're an author of three books. Fantastic. You're a technologist. So how did you get involved, or how did you start your entrepreneurial journey? What led you to that path?
So when I was in my late teens, back in the 90s, as a young man, teenager, I wanted to look good, cool clothes, but I couldn't afford them. So my girlfriend at the time had just graduated from the London College of Fashion, and so she could make the clothes that we saw on TV. And so we saw a gap in the market. We saw a problem that we could solve for us, being able to, look cool like some of our idols, and for that not to, to be able to afford it. But actually then we could solve that problem for others. And so we started a fashion design company, myself and a bunch of friends of mine. And that really gave me the first insight into the journey of entrepreneurial thinking, which is being able to identify a problem that maybe you feel yourself, but then being able to solve that problem, repeat it, and do it for others, and then be able to do that at scale. So we ran that. We didn't even consider it a business or consider ourselves entrepreneurs. We were just hustling, really. Yeah, we were kind of too young to really understand the breadth of what we were doing. But looking back at it, we were learning a whole bunch of new skills. We developed a new mindset. And it was our passion for really, I guess, well, not just fashion, but togetherness, because there was maybe 7 or 8 of us working together. And, we were all friends. We liked spending time together. We like doing new things. We like music, we like fashion, and all of that just kind of gelled together really nicely. But ultimately, at the end of that, became a product that we could sell, and we could make some money from, and we could generate a profit. So, I always say that as, teenagers growing up, that kept us out of trouble for a few summers. And then, we all went our separate ways and started to consider other things. But that was the first real experience of entrepreneurship that I had.
So you're there with your friends. What were you, around 17, 18, 19, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, most people, most youth at that age want to have fun. They're out with their friends. They're doing all these things. But what gave, and you're there doing something, bit of a hobbyish thing, but it was a business. And why do you think your mindset was different from other kids your age doing? What led you to that?
Yeah, so I think that the idea of making money probably wasn't alien to other kids. It's just that they perhaps didn't have the confidence to do that. Because back then the idea of entrepreneurship was just so far flung. It was always about just going out and getting a job, right?
Right.
But I suppose, and that's the reason why I say we didn't really look at it like a business necessarily. But that said, my girlfriend's parents had run a business. Her older brother was in business, and I guess there was an early influence. My father came from Jamaica, and he set up his own business in Park Royal. So looking back at it, there were perhaps a number of subtle influences that I had, which maybe suggested to me that I could do something similar, right? But these, I know, weren't conscious decisions at the time. Right. But looking back at it, I think that maybe some of those peripheral experiences or connections that I had helped to influence me. But also, I think that part of our driver was fashion, right? So much like the approach that we take with our kids, we know that if you are really passionate about something, you will keep exploring the possibilities of that thing, right? And for us, you know, kind of culture at the time, music and fashion, we were really passionate about that. So we were exploring what was possible in that vein, right? And so the idea of being able to make money from it came from the fact that there was a skill set of fashion design, so we can make it. So the idea that we could make a piece of clothing for £5 but sell it for 20 or 30 pounds, right, you know, that was immediately in front of us, right? So the actual we saw the profit in that, and I guess that was a motivator, right? You know, being able to 5x your return on investment. I mean, that made you know sense. That made good sense at the time. Absolutely. And so I think that was just something that we wanted to explore.
Awesome. Now, you've been an entrepreneur for over 2 decades. Now, tell me something. The entrepreneurial journey is not plain sailing. You know, the journey to success as an entrepreneur is not that easy. Why do you think, in your opinion, that some people succeed, whereas some people can't even get off the mark, or, you know, they fold within a year, 2 years, 3 years? What do you think makes the difference?
Yeah, it's funny. So one of my mentees, literally within the last hour, sent me a message and asked, how come rappers set up food businesses, right? How come they're always setting up a drinks business or a food business? Right. And I joked and I said that it's because they are mimicking others that are in the industry. So there are lots of rappers from the States who have either set up a restaurant or they've got their own vodka or tequila or whatever. And I was saying that, you know, the guys over here seem to be kind of copying that blueprint, which is great. But I also said that, you know, food also has a really high profit margin. Food and drink has a high profit margin if you can get it right. And then he asked, so what business models are the easiest to start and are the most profitable? And I said, you're looking at it the wrong way around. I said, everything makes money. Everything makes profit. I said, the 2 things you need to consider are, one, what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that you love doing? And number 2, on top of that, what are you really good at? What are you excellent at? And I explained it by saying that if you're not passionate about the thing you're doing, you won't last the course. You'll give up. And if you're not good at it, then the product or service that you're developing won't be able to deliver enough value for someone to pay for it, right? Because it's just not good enough. Yeah. So, you know, I said that, you know, for me, so in answer to your question, I believe that, and there's a saying, which is that businesses don't fail, entrepreneurs give up, right? And I think the reason why entrepreneurs give up in the main is because they aren't that passionate about the thing that they're doing, right? So they give up because they have lost the passion. And maybe the passion wasn't there in the first place, Mac. Maybe they looked at what you're doing, thought that looks easy, and I'll give it a go, right? But because they're not passionate about it, because they're not good at it, and that really equals authenticity, right? If they don't have that, then it becomes really hard work, which it is anyway, but it's a bit like a sport. You know, I used to play rugby, my son plays football, you know, I used to do martial arts. None of those things are easy when you're in the throes of it, right? It's all difficult, but you're passionate about the game of sport, so you play it even though it's difficult. Same thing with entrepreneurship. I think that if you're passionate about it, then the difficulty is really just about, it's almost part of the enjoyment, but you recognize that if you are a runner and you're knackered at the first 10K, you know, you want to be able to run a marathon, you realize that is just improving your game, right? But whilst you're doing it, it feels uncomfortable, right? So I think it's perspective. So for me, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs I've seen go into industries that they actually had no right being in. They were only there because they thought they could make a quick buck. They weren't there because they believed they could add value to that industry. And then that becomes evident. And I think they give up and fall by the wayside.
You know, I think you're absolutely right there, Julian. You know, if there's no passion in what you're doing and it's not truly you and you have no interest in it, and plus there's no purpose behind it, the biggest, when those obstacles comes, when those challenges come, it's easy to duck out and get out of there and say, actually, and I've been there, I've been there, trust me, my friend. I remember my first business, a computer business, and this was 1999, and I set up this computer business, internet related business, and because the trend was it's going to be internet, it's going to be .com, it was all .com era. But after a few short years, I realized actually I don't enjoy this, and the company had challenges. It took its toll on me financially, took its toll on me health-wise. So I totally agree with what you're saying. Now, Julian, your best-selling book, one of your nar1 best-selling book was Entrepreneur to Ultrapreneur. Fantastic. 100 ways to up your game. What's an ultrapreneur compared to an entrepreneur?
Sure. So entrepreneurship is associated with business. Ultrapreneurship is associated with life. So I remember coming home, one day, this was maybe 2006, after, just setting up one of my businesses. And, I had a young family, and I came home, and I took a pause before I went indoors. And I thought, man, if all I had to do was run the business, that would be one thing. But I've got to run the business, and I've now got to deal with a young family, right? It was a lot of hard work, and I've got to make sure that I'm going to the gym, getting enough sleep, making sure I'm a good, member of the family, and all of the other things that you've got to consider. But what I realized, Matt, was that actually all of the things in your life affect all of the other things in your life. Meaning, if you've had an argument with your partner, that evening, you're probably going to be off your game, the next day at work, right? Definitely. If you've not had enough sleep the night before, you're probably not going to be any good to anyone. If your health is suffering because you're neglecting your diet and you're not, training and taking enough, fresh air and good sunlight, then that's going to similarly affect everything, right? So I think that when I looked at things like business, I looked at mental health, physical health, and relationships, both personally and professionally, I realized that you've got to be able to manage all of those things in order to have a successful life. And that's what entrepreneurship is about. It's about considering and being able to balance, not balance perfectly, but to consider all of those elements of your life, because each one will impact the other. And if you just focus on making money, but you forget about friends and family and your health, then that's catastrophic, right? If you just focus on, on your health, and you don't worry, and you neglect family, and you neglect money, then obviously that's catastrophic too, right? You've got to manage in a careful way all of those elements. And it can take time, because you've got to then figure out, how do all of those elements work for me, right? So what works for you may not work for someone else. And it's difficult because education hasn't taught us to be introspective enough to be able to think about what works for me as an individual. We are often trying to mimic, that archetype out there and copy their routine, when actually you've got to come up with your own.
Wow, awesome. So entrepreneur, living life on your terms, really. I love that. It was you, many years ago when I came across that term, it was through you. I know we've known each other for many years, and so what's this entrepreneur? So I had to go and look it up. So it's fantastic. I'm glad. But, we have a lot of synergy, because years ago when I was struggling, I did that, over 2 decades ago when I was struggling in business. I did neglect my family. I was working all the hours under the sun, neglected my health, didn't take care of it. And so what you're saying is actually spot on. I want to talk about Ultra Education, which is your company, Ultra Education. Tell us what it is, and tell us what the mission of Ultra Education is.
Sure. So Ultra Education is a social enterprise which teaches entrepreneurship to children from 7 to 18 years old. And our mission is to use entrepreneurship as a vehicle to increase the life chances of children and young people from less advantaged backgrounds, right? And because we've realized, and I've realized in my own life, and this may resonate with you, is that entrepreneurship is a really great self-development vehicle, right? Anyone that stuck it out as an entrepreneur has probably developed themselves as an individual, not just their businesses, but as an individual.
Yeah.
You've probably developed a whole bunch of skills and adopted a mindset that you can use in all areas of your life, right? And in the social impact sector, we talk about life chances. So the biggest predictor of life chances in this country, believe it or not, is the postcode that you were born in. Biggest predictor of your life chances, right? So they can predict how well you'll do based on where you're born. Massively unfair, you know, but it is what it is. However, things like entrepreneurship can help you to break that statistic. It can help you to redefine what your life chances could look like, regardless of where you're born. And we've seen loads of examples of that, right?
Yeah.
And so for us, we want to create or create a way in which that success can be repeated. Because I guess for me, you know, I don't consider myself being any more special than anyone else. But I've been able to achieve things much like yourself, Mac, which has probably broken the statistic of our demographics, where we were born, all the rest of it. And so I want to reverse engineer that so that it could be available to any child, any young person. And I do that through delivering entrepreneurship. Some people do it through sports, through music, through other vehicles. You know, the vehicle that's worked for me and the vehicle that I'm authentic in being able to design is entrepreneurship. And I think that lastly, I want entrepreneurial education to be available to everyone. So if you think about a language, so let's say there was a child anywhere in this country that wanted to learn Spanish, or they wanted to learn chess, or they wanted to learn to play the guitar, that's, you know, pretty easily accessible. They could pretty much go anywhere and be able to find that, right? But if they wanted to learn how to set up a business and they're 12 years old, they wanted to learn about entrepreneurship and they're 15 years old, they'll probably struggle to easily access that information and that support. And that's our ambition, to be able to make that really easily accessible.
That's excellent. You know, and the last time we met several years back, I said to you, it's admirable what you're doing and the work you're doing, and to go out there and wanting to work with children to help them to become entrepreneurial. So like you said, it just, you know, for me, it becomes an equator in terms of people now have choice. And if you can become an entrepreneur, you're more less likely to fall into that statistic, like you said. Now, for those of our listeners who are tuned in, thinking, I'm thinking of starting a business, but where do I start from? Look, how did you start, or where did the idea of ultra education come from? Why? How did you wake up one day, or did you wake up one day and say, actually, my new social enterprise is going to be working with kids as an entrepreneur? What happened? Was there a process you went through?
Yeah, you know what? I wish I was smart enough to have said that I woke up with the idea. It happened gradually over time. And I tell you, actually, so, you know, I had a digital agency in Shoreditch, and we were delivering digital marketing services, right? Then I realized that it's difficult to market a bad product or service, right? So then I would start to advise, myself and my business partners would start to advise businesses on how they could improve their products and services, because we were saying to them, look, you know, in order for the marketing to work you know, in a sustainable fashion, one of the ways you'll get marketing is through social proof, is through recommendations, testimonials. And if your product and service isn't that good, you're not going to get that. So let's help you develop your product and service, right? So then the agency developed into a kind of consultancy that delivered services, just a general business consultancy, right? Because we were really good at helping people improve their businesses, their startup companies. And so then I started to, you know, coach, consult, and do that, you know, a lot more. And then I realized that, you know, this statistic, 9 out of 10 businesses fail. I looked at that and I thought, in working with all these businesses, and all these entrepreneurs, one of the things I realized held them back was their mindset. So it's not, if you think about it, the mechanics of setting up a business isn't actually that difficult.
No.
The dynamics of it are, though, and the mindset is very, very difficult. And actually, I've had, a number of experiences where it was so difficult to move these entrepreneurs forward that I thought, okay, what's going on here? If I looked at first principles, where is this coming from? And I realized it was coming from the psychology, but I also realized I wasn't qualified enough to be able to deal with that psychology. And I thought, you know what? There are more experienced business coaches and consultants who can maybe help these grown-ups, right? I then thought, what if I could have worked with this entrepreneur when they were a child?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What if I could have given you a mindset when you were a teenager that would then prevent you from saying, I can't do this now that you're an adult, right? That happened in parallel with my daughter, who was 6 or 7 years old, and she was mimicking me. So when, I remember I was in Sainsbury's with her, carrying her on my shoulders, and she said to me, Daddy, what is that guy doing? I said, oh, he's stacking the shelves. She said, why is he doing that? I said, because that's his job. And she said, no, Daddy, your job is when you are writing books and you're talking in front of the computer and you're sending emails.
And where'd she get that from then?
And she was describing me, right? So her first idea of what a job was an entrepreneur, right? And then she started to replay, children mimic, right? The people around them. But she started to mimic me, and family and friends thought that I was explicitly teaching her entrepreneurship, but I wasn't. I wasn't teaching her at all. But she seemed to have just been picking up all this stuff. And my wife, who was, a really experienced early years teacher, she started to explain that, look, children can learn, 6 or 7 languages by the time they're 5, 6 years old. They could become proficient at a musical instrument at a young age. And actually entrepreneurship, because she's been following my entrepreneurial journey and picking up, business ideas and tips and ways in which businesses can be successful her own. She's part of the whole journey. And between us, we came to the conclusion that perhaps entrepreneurship can be taught. Because if my daughter was picking it up by accident, maybe this stuff can be taught. So a number of these things were happening in parallel. And so we started a pilot where we ran a club in a bookshop in Brixton for about 15 kids. My wife came up with the activities with myself, and we ran it, and it was a huge success, right? We were blown away with the insights that kids had, the ideas that they had, the way they were able to quickly pick up concepts, and that's where it started.
Awesome. Well, good job with that. Whilst you're on it, tell us a little bit. You got one of your big events coming up very soon for entrepreneurial kids. Tell us a little bit more about that. How can people find out about that or attend if they so choose?
Yeah, certainly. So we, as part of our work, run kids business fairs. And on December the 3rd, so a week after next, we have our 9th kids business fair. And the idea of these events is, in our programs, we are helping kids to essentially set up a business in the form of a product or service that they can sell, right? And we punctuate those events, those programs, those weekly programs and clubs with events that the kids can show up to and exhibit, right? And they are there to showcase what they've been working on and to sell.
Right.
And we ran our 8th kids business fair at Wembley Stadium in April. At the end of April, we had 100 kid entrepreneurs in the space. For the 1 week after next, we've got 130 kid entrepreneurs signed up. So, the team are just hands on deck, getting everything prepared for the day. But it's a great family event. We're going to have business people, educators, people from the community there. It's going to be at the Bobby Moore Suite of Wembley Stadium. So really nice venue, as you know. Which is also a social mobility piece, right? We're trying to get kids into spaces that they wouldn't normally access. So
Right.
it helps to raise their aspiration and give them a sense of pride. And so, we're really, really looking forward to it. If you go to our website, ultra.education, or if you look up Ultra Education on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, the link is in our bio for the Eventbrite. Free tickets, come along and enjoy the day.
Awesome. Well, I think it's a good cause. Fantastic. Well done, you. I'm just going to say one thing, and I'm going to bring you back to maybe give us some final words around entrepreneurism or what you're doing with children. So you're listening to Mac Attram here with Julian Hall, the Business Success Show. And if you like what you heard so far, make sure you smash that like button, you follow, you subscribe, depending on which channel you are on. And so we've been talking all things mindset around entrepreneurs. We've been talking all things about success and failure. We've been talking about making a difference and having a social impact, especially the work that Julian's doing, helping kids to really aspire to greatness. On that note, Julian, any final words you want to add or say before we come to our end of our show here?
Yeah, well, look, Matt, I'd really like to thank you for allowing me on your platform. You are an entrepreneur that I know lots of people look up to, and it's been great sharing, this time with you, just to kind of talk about our work and our story. And I, wish you all the success for the future, and for your many listeners, I'd just like to say to them that, entrepreneurship has been a really great development vehicle for myself. It's worked for many of our kids. We're really passionate about what we do. And if you stick to what you're passionate about and you have some great support around you, like individuals like yourself, Mac, then, it can help to ease that journey along.
Awesome. I love that. Now, before we end here, let me just punctuate what Julian has said, because he might be a bit humble, but I want to say this. If you know anyone who has a child who you think might want to develop entrepreneurially, connect them with Julian. Or you are a parent thinking, actually, I want success for my child. Now, and if they choose to have a job in the future, that's fine. Academic success will take them a certain way, but real life success, there's actually, there has to be another way. And if you can't do that as a parent, or there's no one in the family they can aspire to, get them along to Ultra Education's program at Wembley, connect them with Julian, go and learn. Because when I was younger, possibly like you, Julian, there was nowhere else you could go and say, actually, I want to study this as a child. And I suppose if I had gone down that route, I probably wouldn't have made half the mistakes I made, but everything happens for a reason. So connect with Ultra Education, connect with Julian.
Thank you, Mac.
On that note, take care, Julian. I really appreciate your time and effort on this show and giving us so many golden nuggets. Thank you, and take care, and God bless you, my friend.
Thank you, Mac. Have a great one.